to the story. I'm Brittany Folkers in for Pat Doris tonight. And let's get straight to our big story. Drug users in downtown Portland are overdosing at an alarming rate, and many are dying. Here's a look at the latest data from Portland police on overdose deaths. Nearly 90 back in 2020. It jumped to 135 in 2021, then to 159 in all of 2022. But look at the number so far this year, 151 in less than 7 months. Police expect that number to be around 300 by year's end. Now, if that doesn't paint a grim enough picture for you, this next story will. Open-air drug use is common in parts of Portland, especially downtown. But what we don't see is the toll that overdoses are taking on our first responders and emergency resources. Portland Fire Station 1 downtown averaged 10 overdose calls every single day last month. And there doesn't appear to be an end to this devastating routine. Blair Best has our story.
It's an OD call. The crews have been running a lot of ODs.
It's 4 p.m. on a Monday.
All right, we're here. Let's do it.
Well, we're here for you.
On Northwest 5th and Davis, Portland firefighters help a man who likely overdosed from opioids.
So, do you know where you are right now?
Yes.
Where is that?
It's a heavy scene.
Is that a no, then? Do you not want to go to the hospital?
They see it daily.
You're intoxicated currently, right? It's hard to see people in that state.
Paramedic firefighter David Friedrichs has been with Portland Fire and Rescue for 13 years. The last 5, he's worked at Station 1 downtown, the busiest firehouse in the city, especially when it comes to overdoses.
At this point, it's kind of callous, but we just go on these calls and they've become routine, whereas it used to be kind of a big deal to go on an overdose.
Not anymore. In June alone, firefighters from Station 1 responded to 300 overdoses.
And this is just a 48-hour shift. In May, we had 33.
Would it be safe to say you respond to more overdoses than fires?
Yeah.
And that doesn't take us long to see.
Overdose. You want to go?
He laughs at just how hopeless it all feels. 2 other OD calls come in right after.
So yeah, that was what, 3 OD calls that happened in a matter, it dropped in what, 25 seconds?
We head to one under a bridge in southwest Portland.
Hit some against some bad confetti. He just fell out and he was great. He was turning gray and his eyes was rolling back his head. And we just Narcaned him and stuff. He came back. By
fetty, she means fentanyl. Before we got there, the man was revived by Narcan, an opioid reversal medication.
It's very traumatizing, obviously, for her. I don't really know how I got here necessarily, other than my poor choices.
Like the man in Old Town, he didn't want to go to the hospital.
And I obviously made a mistake.
This wasn't his first overdose, but since he's alive and coherent, there's nothing else first responders can do. So everyone just moves on.
I just need to kind of reset back into reality here a little bit if I can.
Yeah.
Not long after that,
Well,
another OD call comes in.
The alleyway off of 5th.
all right, ambulance is with us.
And then another.
This is a fairly large camp area.
We head to one off Northwest NATO under the Steel Bridge in a notorious homeless camp called The Pit.
My friend just overdosed on fentanyl and yeah, he literally died right here. It was purple. We had to give him CPR and Narcan him, and I literally had to breathe into him until I felt him come back to life.
I just need to answer 3 questions. How many quarters in $1?
1.
This man also refuses medical help, but since he answered their questions, the first responders move on.
We're okay. Thank you.
Yep.
He's been through this before. There's no need for him to go to the hospital when he's all right. You know, there's nothing they can do for him there that I can't do right here.
As you can see, it's rare for crews to show up to an overdose and Narcan hasn't already been given. Now they fear the accessibility of Narcan is giving drug users a false sense of security, and in some ways could be making this crisis worse, even though it saves lives.
Their heart stops working and everything shuts down, their brain stops working, and without Narcan, they'll die.
It's like watching a slow motion train wreck, like where you're not able to help stop the problem, and it just continues to happen again and again.
And each time they respond to what has become an endless, exhausting routine.
We're beating our head against the wall, and you know, the numbers that we're dealing with are unsustainable.
Blair joins us now. So Blair, you were out with these firefighters. How long were you on this ride along?
We were out with the crews for 4 hours, Brittany, and as you saw in the piece, numerous times during our interview, we were interrupted because another OD call was coming in. And I can tell you, in that 4 hours, they didn't respond to a single fire. They responded to one assault, but most of the calls were OD calls. And when they do respond to fires, a majority of the time, they're homeless camp related.
And you could see it from the firefighters. I mean, this is just such a part of daily life. How frustrating that is to feel like there's really no solutions in sight. And when you see them go to these, there really isn't a solution here.
Right, and that's not a lack for them trying. They do offer people resources, try to help them get into treatment, but in that moment, a lot of times people who are overdosing, they don't want the help in that moment. You saw a lot of people are declining medical help, saying they don't want to go to the hospital. So this is just an exhausting, endless, ruthless routine, really.
It really is. And you know, when you see them go there, a lot of times we saw in your story that the Narcan has already been administered. So by the time they get there, there's really nothing they can do, especially if they don't want to go to the hospital.
Right, and if someone, if the homeless person who overdosed has a friend that's willing to stay with them, they just leave them. I mean, they check on them, they ask them a series of questions, and that's about it. It's pretty sad to see.
Yeah, it's just, like you said, a relentless cycle, and our first responders are there on the forefront for it. So Blair, thank you so much. Such an important story. So what is going through your mind right now? What do you think needs to be done? Let us know. Well, you can email at thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 503-226-5090. All right, let's talk politics, because late Monday, a group of Oregon Senate Republicans announced their plans to run for re-election in 2024. That group includes Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp and Senator Dennis Linthicum, They were both part of the Senate walkout this past session, and both exceeded the 10 unexcused absences threshold. Now, according to Measure 113, passed by voters last year, that would disqualify them from holding office following the end of their current term. Even amid the walkout, GOP senators said that they would test Measure 113 in court. But first, Knopp is asking the new Secretary of State for a ruling on whether or not he and Linthicum are eligible to run next year.
Well, the Secretary of State is, I think, considering a declaratory ruling on whether or not we can have ballot access for those who have gone past the 10 unexcused absences that Senate President was solely in charge of doing. And so we are hopeful that the Secretary will make a ruling in the very near future.
Knopp says that they hope to have an answer in the next few weeks. The Secretary of State's office only tells us that they're reviewing the matter. Now, hindsight is 20/20, as they say, so we asked Senator Knopp if he regrets walking out, potentially putting his political career at risk.
No, I do stand by the decision. I think it was the right decision to walk out. I think it was the right decision to come back to a deal that the Democrats said that they wouldn't negotiate. In fact, they did. And we do appreciate that. But what was done with the unexcused absences were arbitrary and capricious and retaliatory. And so we think if the people actually knew what was going to happen before they voted on Measure 113, I don't think they would have voted for it.
So will Republicans weaponize the walkout again in the future, no matter what the Secretary of State decides this time around? Well, Knopp says Republicans would consider walking out again if Democrats, quote, go back to their old ways, whatever that might mean. So as we wait on the new Secretary of State to issue a ruling on Measure 113, many of you have asked us, how are these ballot measures passed by voters, but immediately challenged in court and not implemented? Well, Oregon's gun control measure 114 is another example here. It turns out there's a reason for that, and it's something that's not part of the ballot initiative process in the first place. We'll explain that tomorrow right here on The Story. Still to come, though, what's the deal with the pump your own gas bill? We get questions from you all the time. Is the governor going to sign it or what? So how long does she have to make a decision? Well, we're going to explain it all and tell you what her office told us today when the story returns. On yesterday's show, we told you about Governor Kotek's visit to Eastern Oregon late last week. She had a handful of stops in Grant and Harney counties. She made an in-person visit to 20 of the state's 36 counties. It's part of our One Oregon listening tour that'll continue until she hits every county in the state. And we asked for your thoughts on her visit out east, especially considering the feedback we got after Pat Doris's Eastern Oregon series. A lot of folks out there have told us that they feel like lawmakers in Salem just aren't listening to them. And I do gotta say, we were a bit surprised at all of the positive messages that you sent in. Laura, she told us it is refreshing to learn that Governor Kotek visited Grant County, talked with residents, asked good questions, and listened to citizen responses. No, that's not political show. It's what political leaders should do. Let's see more of it. A viewer named MJ told us, I think it's great that Governor Kotek is moving forward with her listening tours. It's a first step and needs to continue, whether it's her, or a representative. There are more opinions and ideas out there that need to be heard and included as decisions are made for the state. And finally, there's this one from Anne. It's a start, I think. I believe it to be genuine and the beginnings of better understanding. I hope Governor Kotek takes more listening tours like the one to Grant County. And okay, anytime we mention Governor Tina Kotek lately, several of you send us emails and voicemails that sound a little something like this.
Yeah, I was wondering why you guys haven't gotten in the Oregon governor's face to ask her why she's not signing the bill to allow us to pump our own gas. Oregonians overwhelmingly want this, and she just seems to be ignoring it. I was just wondering, what her position is on this, why she's not signing it. Thank you.
And Jim wrote into us saying, please do a story ASAP about the holdup with Governor Kotek on signing the pump your own gas bill. I understand that time is running out. So, okay, let's address a few points here from both Doug and Jim. First, that Oregonians overwhelmingly want this. Well, that's not quite the case, according to the feedback that we've received here on the show, as well as the emails that are being sent in to the governor's office. In updated numbers given to us today about the sheer volume of emails her office has received about the bill, they tell us they've gotten around 5,500 so far. Nearly 3,000 want the bill signed, and 2,600 do not want it signed in order to keep things the same way that they are now. So your feedback to us when we talk about the bill follows a similar pattern. The governor's office tells us, well, she remains interested in hearing from Oregonians, but again, they would not say if she's leaning one way or the other when it comes to whether she's actually going to sign it, right? So now let's address Jim's point that time's running out. The governor has until August 4th to decide on this bill, meaning we could be waiting until late next week for a final decision. And there's a reason why she's had so much time to deliberate and get feedback from Oregonians, and it's thanks to the state constitution. Now, normally, this is the part of the show where we'd read to you exactly what the Constitution says and explain it from there. But the section relating to the governor signing or vetoing bills is complicated, to say the least, okay? It's Article 5, Section 15B, for those of you who do want to look it up for yourselves. We had to enlist the help of the chief clerk of the Oregon House to help us unwind all the legal language. So let's give you the boiled down version instead. We'll start with bills that are passed in the middle of the legislative session. In that scenario, the governor has 5 business days to sign the bill or veto it and send it back to the chamber it originated in. If she does neither of those things within the 5 days, the bill automatically becomes law, even without her signature. But again, this is only for bills that are passed during the middle of the session. The rules change if the bill lands on her desk in the 5 days leading up to the end of the session. If that's the case, as it is with the pump your own gas bill, a 30-day clock starts from the day the session ends. And here's the thing, it's 30 business days. So because the last day of the session was a Sunday, June 25th, 30 business days later lands us on August 4th. So if you really want to make things complicated, and it's politics, so why not, right? Let's say the governor vetoes a bill after the session is over. She has the constitutional right to call a special session, or the bill would go back to its original chamber at the beginning of the next session for the following year. Are you keeping up? This is a lot. Now, there is some debate over those end of the session bills becoming law if the governor does not sign or veto within those 30 business days. But we're told the Constitution is written in a way that makes it seem like it would become law even without her signature if she does not act. But in this case, I would imagine that the governor will make a decision one way or another on the pump your own gas bill. Some viewers at home may have to pump the brakes and wait until late next week, and they have the state constitution to thank for that. All right, still to come here on The Story. There are thousands of cosmetic products out there marketed to help you look a certain way or fit in to what society expects. But if you use those products, do you ever wonder and really think about the price of beauty and how it's negatively affecting your overall health? The state of Washington is cracking down on harmful chemicals found in some cosmetics. We're going to tell you all about it when The Story returns.
Coming up at 6:30, court documents reveal the violent history of the man who shot and killed a security guard at a Northwest Portland hospital. What we're learning about Pontiac's cows. Plus, an 18-year-old jailed on attempted murder charges may have been involved in a crash that killed 2 teens. What we learned from the suspect's court appearance today. And evacuation orders expand, and a key highway is closed for a fast-moving wildfire in Klickitat County. The latest on the Newell Road fire and other fires burning across the region. Those stories and more coming up at 6:30.
Well, the practice of fitting in has cost many women their health. The Facing Race team at our sister station in Seattle found it's raising the risk of cancer specifically among Black women. But as PJ Rendawa reports, the state of Washington is cracking down on the use of harmful hair chemicals marketed to women of color.
Raise your hand if you believe you've risked your health to look beautiful.
Yes. I will never forget that burning sensation. And I remember feeling like my scalp was on fire.
I remember getting my hair straightened and my mom using the hot iron, burning my ear. So painful for me.
And everybody was doing it.
Generations of Black women using hair straightening chemicals known as relaxers that can be painful, costly, and worse.
Who has heard that the chemicals in these products, many people believe they cause cancer?
Me.
Yes.
Now the state of Washington is taking steps to ban several dangerous chemicals found in cosmetic products marketed to communities of color. The cancer risk associated with many of these products has been documented for decades. A 2022 study by the National Cancer Institute found women using chemical hair straightening products are at a higher risk of uterine cancer than women who reported not using them.
Every Black person knows a Black person that has had a cancer that has been grounded in some environmental or some kind of chemical.
The result? Communities of color put at risk over the pressure to conform to often Eurocentric beauty standards. These clients of hairstylist and salon owner Jackie Christian know it all too well.
And I think it was just like we were also in a time when society kind of dictated that good hair was straight and bad hair was nappy.
That pressure often also fueled by discrimination in the workplace. In 2020, researchers at Duke University found Black women with natural hairstyles are perceived to be less professional and less competent than women with straight hair.
And that's grounded in patriarchy and misogyny, right? This idea that, there's some perfect way to be in the world.
New product testing conducted earlier this year in state labs confirmed the presence of cancer-causing chemicals in many cosmetic products marketed and sold to women of color in Washington, including lipsticks, foundation, lotions, and chemical hair relaxers.
We detected formaldehyde in 26 out of 30 of those products, and we found lead in 3 out of 20 of the products that we tested. And during development, our brains are so sensitive to lead exposure, there's a reason to be concerned.
State toxicologist Marissa Smith explains why these toxic chemicals end up in beauty products.
Sometimes it has to do with the function. So skin lightening creams and hair relaxers, they're just serving a function that's more likely to have toxic chemicals.
A lot of these companies that are manufacturing these darker shades, they are not Black owned, so they don't have a dog in the fight. They're just making money.
The results of the testing led to a new law in Washington, which will restrict the sale of personal care products that contain 7 classes of dangerous chemicals, including lead. Salon owner Jackie Christian says it's a move long delayed.
They don't care about our health. They don't care that we're burying our loved ones and and they don't care that our young women are having hysterectomies before they can even have families. They don't care about that. That does not faze them. But losing money does.
But these women know, despite the cancer risks, there are still some minds that won't be swayed.
Who knows people who are aware that these products could cause cancer but still use them anyways?
Yes.
I convinced maybe a handful of clients to let's not do a relaxer. They was like, as opposed to what? And I was like, let's press it. Some said, okay, we'll try this so we can stop this breakage. And some was like, no, we're gonna see you later. We're gonna go over here where they're gonna keep relaxing our hair. And so what I began to notice was the hair was growing back, it was healthy.
It started off with just, okay, this is not good for our hair. We can't keep doing this. And then I think it later just turned on into, okay, this is reclaiming our culture.
Reclaiming their culture, preserving their health, and breaking the cycle for their own children.
It's a beautiful thing to see them kind of growing up in a world where they don't even have to second guess if their hair is presentable or not.
Washington's Toxic-Free Cosmetics Act will ban PFAS chemicals, formaldehyde, and formaldehyde-releasing agents from cosmetics by 2025. It will also provide incentives for small businesses to make safer cosmetics. For Facing Race, I'm PJ Randhawa.
Well, that's the end of our show. Thank you so much for watching. Stick around for the news at 6:30 and then join me on the good stuff at 7 o'clock. Have a good night.